Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm back talking about another Sony E mount lens from Tamron. This one also kind of popped on us out of nowhere, but this could be the one lens you're gonna wanna have if you're on a budget, if you're traveling, and you don't have a lot of room to carry a bunch of different lenses. This lens can pretty much do it all. This is the 70-300 f4.5-6.3 III RXD for Sony E mount. Let's talk about it. Okay, now before we get into this, I want to give a shout out to Tamron Singapore for helping me with this review. Having said that, my thoughts only. Let's talk about the world's smallest and lightest telephoto zoom lens for Sony E mount. That is this Tamron 70-300. Guys, if you haven't used a Tamron lens before, there's a no-frills design to it. If you've used the other lenses, it looks exactly the same. It's got minimal markings on it. It's matte black, very nondescript, lightweight, coming in at 545 grams, and weather resistant. It's a good performer. It's all about what's inside of this lens. You've got 15 elements, 10 groups to this. You've got a 67mm filter thread on this, so it's the same filter thread as you're going to get on the other Tamron lenses. So if you have a lot of those in your kit already, you can put that ND filter, polarizer, all that can go on this lens, no issues at all. The autofocusing system on this lens is also very, very quick. I don't notice any difference from using a Tamron lens and using a Sony G Master or Sony native lens at all. As a matter of fact, they're neck and neck. The performance on this lens, which we'll talk about in just a second, is really, really good for a price point, as I mentioned before, under 1,000 Singapore dollars. So, how's the zoom on it? It's telescopic. So while it is the smallest and lightest telephoto zoom on the Sony E mount camera, as soon as you open it up, it does get a little bit of length on it, but you know what? I'll forgive them for that, for the price point and for the weight. Even at this, at 300 millimeters, is very small, very compact. This is a great travel camera. Wildlife, portraiture, weddings. This lens will pretty much do most of what you need it to do. You might be saying, but it's 4.5 to 6.3, Bobby. That's a little bit slow on the aperture. I'll tell you what, trust me, when you use this lens, it performs very well, and that's what we're gonna talk about right now in terms of performance. Now, in terms of performance, this is a variable aperture lens. So you're gonna go from f4.5 at 70 millimeters up to about 125 millimeters, where it moves up to f5. f5 will stay with you to about 150 millimeters thereabouts. I mean, this is no science on this one, I'm just guesstimating. And then f5.6, all the way up to about 250 to 300, you're at 6.3. So you're getting a pretty decent range on this lens for the aperture. And now, let's say at 300 millimeters at f6.3, you're getting a really nice depth of field, really good separation. This is gonna be fantastic for wildlife, great for portraiture, and you're gonna be really happy with this lens. Now, unfortunately, there's no optical stabilization inside of this lens. So at 300 millimeters, this is something I wish was there, because you do see a little bit more camera shake coming into play, because Sony's IBIS, of course, isn't, industry leading out there, as we all know. It's decent, but at 300 millimeters, you just start seeing it float a little bit, so you better be a bit steady with this, because the lens is also light along with the camera system. That is something I wish was in this lens, but besides that, the images are tacked sharp. Beautiful bokeh, beautiful separation. You get a nice pop from your subject to the background. I mean, Tamron lenses, we've used various different lenses on this channel. You guys have probably used it too. That same image quality is in this 70-300. It is a fantastic lens in that regard. You're gonna pull out some great images. Weddings, wildlife, sports, you name it, it works well. Autofocusing is also very, very quick. Thanks to the motor inside of this lens, along with the focusing system that I have here on the A7R4, I have no issues at all. But besides that, let's also talk about macro capabilities on this, because this lens also does very well on macro. If I'm at 70 millimeters, I can get about 30 centimeters between myself and the subject, and I can get really nice shots, okay? And at 4.5, that's pretty good for macro. You're still gonna get great separation, great bokeh, great depth of field, but you're gonna get a lot more of what you want in focus. Now, I do use a various different macro lenses. I've done reviews on this channel for that already. And let's say it's at f2.8. Well, at f2.8 on a macro, it's just a little bit of what you're getting in focus and the rest is just blown out. F4.5 is really nice if you want to capture, let's say, watches or, camera bodies or you name it. You're going to get more of what you want in focus at f4.5 versus f2.8 because usually I'm stopping down anyway. So no issues at all with that. Also, you can do decent macro as well when you're at 300 millimeters. So Tamron is really giving you a lot in this lens at a very good price. Anyway, enough of me talking about the performance of it. Let's show you proof of performance by going into Lightroom now, and I'll walk you through some of the images I've taken with the 70-300 f4.5 to 6.3 on the Sony A7R4.
All right, guys, we are now in Lightroom taking a look at images from the Tamron 70-300. And I took some shots at the zoo. I took some shots over at Gardens by the Bay. Just going to show you some variations and talk about some of the image quality performance of the lens thus far. Let's take a look at something I've seen in other reviews in terms of softness around the edges. Now, this was taken near, this was random street. They had some, I don't know what this is, to be honest with you, but it looked very interesting. Sometimes we find these things as we do street photography. Anyway, if we zoom in on this, you can see this is with the Sony A7R4. There's a lot of great detail here. You can see almost the threads through the fabric right here all the way through it. But if you want to look at the edges of the image, you will notice there is some softness here at the edges. And that is something that I have noticed. This is at 300 millimeters, f6.3, 1/250th of a second, ISO 160. So at ISO 160, this should be a tack sharp image. And it is in the center. Around the edges, around 300 millimeters, you will see some softening. It's not a deal breaker for me, to be honest with you. Now, for some who need corner to corner sharpness, then maybe this lens might not be for you, but you're looking at a price point that is really affordable and very reasonable. Obviously, if you want to spend more money, you will get more performance, but I will say for the majority of people out there, in my personal opinion, this is more than adequate. Let's look at some other images here. Here's a side of a building. I just wanted to get it because the lines, again, in terms of the sharpness, if we look in the middle of this image, it's really sharp through here. Of course, if you go to the edges, you will see it's slightly softer in the edges, not a lot. Again, this is at 5.6, 150 millimeters, ISO 100. So it's a little bit better performing than at 300 millimeters, but you know, again, there will be some pixel peepers out there, but to the average person looking at this image, there is no issues at all with this. To me, it's fantastic. Okay, now let's go to Gardens by the Bay here. Here's one of the super trees. I want to get this sort of silhouette action. This is at 107 millimeters, f4.5, 1/6400ths of a second, ISO 100, bright day out there. So taking a look, this looks sharp. Again, is there softness in the edges? At 107 millimeters, 100 millimeters, you don't see it as much as you do at 300 millimeters. So I'm more than happy with the performance of this lens. Let's take a look at some animals here because we went to the zoo, as I tend to do with telephoto zoom lenses, to sort of capture animals. And here's a few of them out there. Here is a white tiger. Of course, you know, sometimes you get tigers when they walk around and sometimes you don't. Case in point, this one was taking a nap, but it was looking right at me going, I'm not leaving until you get done taking a photo. Okay, ISO 500, 300 millimeters, f6.3, 1/250th of a second. And this is tack sharp where I wanted to focus, right here in the eyes. But as you can see, a little softer here at the edges. Again, if my focus is here on the eyes, I don't care about the edges, especially for animals, but to each their own. But I'm really happy with the quality this lens is producing. Let's take a look at another image here. Here is a lion. And again, really happy with the image quality. Just to show you what it looks like before edit and after edit, so if you want to see the difference, okay? I make my images a little bit more gritty, a little grittier, a little bit more urban. That's my style of preference currently. That might change in a few months' time, but that's what it is. And again, this is raw, out of camera. Look how sharp this is. Right there on the eye. I'm zooming in. Again, this is 123 megabyte file, so this is a very large file, A7R4. This is fantastic. I don't care if the edges are soft right here. I really don't, because my focus is on the lioness's face, and it nailed it. So really, really happy. Then let's move on to this. Here's another Linus, and this was actually behind the bushes. So let me just show you what it looked like prior. This is pre-edit, and then here's edit. And again, look at this. Look how sharp this is. I'm really, really happy with this image. This is ISO 800, 300mm f6.3, 1/3/20th of a second. Now, the one thing about the A7R4 is that you will notice as soon as you start going above ISO 500, you're gonna see some noise creeping into your images. It's just the nature of this sensor. So this sensor is optimal for, you know, bright lights, low ISO. You're gonna get fantastic image quality. Once you start cranking up the ISO a little bit, you will see a lot of noise creeping in. Let's take a look at another image here. Here's a Mercat, and this one, ISO 1250. So there is a lot of noise in this image. 288mm of 6.3, 1/3/20th of a second. And it's sharp. I mean, it's sharp for what it is. There is some noise there, but again, the lens performs beautifully. This would look like pre-edit, after edit, pre-edit, after edit. Again, edits are personal preference, but to each their own. But overall, just to kind of go over some other images here, when you're in really good lighting, and for the most part, you're gonna see some fantastic image quality coming from this lens. Again, it's the price point and the Tamron image quality that you're paying for. If you want the best build quality out of a lens, you're gonna spend more money. But for a lot of people out there that want a good focal range from 70 to 300mm, yes, it's a little bit slower of an aperture, but this will cover most of what you need. On a bright day like I was shooting, you're gonna get really impressive images around that are going to really impress you. Again, pixel peepers out there will always find something wrong with every lens, but for the majority of us out there who just want to take good photos, this Tamron 70-300, it's a winner.
Price point, quality, image performance, all that is here in this lens. Yes, I'm a fan of it. Wish it was a little bit better designed. I said that about previous Tamron lenses, but for the price, I'm not gonna complain because it does the job exceedingly well. And I would definitely recommend buying this lens. Are you tracking me, Jay? Look at that. I would definitely recommend buying this lens if you need a good 70-300 in your bag. This is the lens to get. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this new 70-300 f4.5 to 6.3. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like always, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, like this video. If you really like what I'm talking about, even if you don't, help us out a little bit. It helps out the channel. Be safe out there, and we'll chat to you soon. Take care.